afternoon, and good evening to you, wherever you may be in the world. And if you're joining us from Australia, then our hats are off to you. It's I think it's 1 a.m. there. Thank you for joining us on the Tip Insights 2021, where we will hear from TIP members the latest updates on TIP with regard to things like open Wi-Fi, open transport, and open RAN, hot topics in telco, and critical elements for building the next generation of our infrastructure. So today's agenda will run about 2.5 hours, and we have a lot of content in store for you. We're going to start with a keynote. We'll have Iago Tenario and Ihab Taradzi from Dell talking, just chatting in the keynote. And then following that, we have a fireside chat with IFC. And then we're going to hear about the success of open Wi-Fi in education in Africa, followed by Axiata and Open RAN and the role of an SI in deployment of Open RAN. Thereafter, we'll talk about an open and disaggregated journey with Orange, and about common test and validation. As we know, testing is very critical to success, especially with the new technologies going in around open transport. And then I'm going to lead and moderate a conversation with a panel on Open RAN, and then I'll turn it over to Caroline and Juan Carlos for closing remarks. So that will run about 2.5 hours, and I hope you stay with us the whole time. There's plenty of content in store for you. And so definitely excited about today's content. Very good. Well, we're going to get started and not to hold you back from the stars of our show. And we're going to start with actually not one speaker, but two. So you get two for the price of one here. We have Iago Tenario, who is the TIP chairman and president. He's the fellow and network architecture director at Vodafone. And we have Ihab Taradzi, who is the TIP board member, and he is the CTO and SVP of networking solutions over at Dell Technologies. So let me turn it over to Iago and Ihab. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Roy. And good morning, afternoon, or evening to everybody. My pleasure to be sharing stage with Ihab here today. So let me maybe take you quickly through some of the progress that we've been making this year. And then I'm looking forward to having a discussion with Ihab and getting his views. So I'll be brief. First of all, remember, so TIP, our mission is to drive the disaggregation of software and hardware to create new opportunities, new players, to drive competition into the ecosystem. And we are doing all this actually to keep innovation going. Now, this used to be our vision when I joined TIP, I think 4 years ago. Now it's no longer a vision, it's a reality. It's happening, and it's happening now. So we were hesitating what to call this keynote. So at the end, we went for accelerating commercial realities, because Open RAN is an actual reality out there today. And I remember when I joined TIP Insights 2020, and I was at this stage, I think it's the first time we went public with our announcement that we were in Vodafone going to roll out 2,500 nodes of Open RAN in the UK. And that was a year ago, this month. Then speaking about progress, later on the year, we named our vendors for that journey. Also in 2021, 5 of the biggest operators in Europe got together and published their requirements together with their commitment to actually roll out Open RAN in Europe. So it's not surprising. If we go to the next slide, you'll see how the global landscape look like of operators worldwide that are engaged in either some kind of Open RAN trial or in actual deployment. This map last year was looking much smaller, and you can see that this is beyond gaining traction is happening. Now, Open RAN gets normally the lion's share when it comes to disaggregation, but it's not the only thing. Actually, If you go to the next slide, you'll see when it comes to transport. So in the open optical and packet transport trials and deployment, this is starting to also look pretty populated. So I think when it comes to Open RAN trials, if I'm not wrong, we have 35 ongoing. When it comes to transport disaggregation, we actually have another 40 going. So when you put it all together, it looks like, a pretty global movement. I see the slides going back and forth. I think this is the right one. Stay there. Okay. Thank you. So you can see how this has gained traction and is, we could say, is unstoppable now, and is happening. And actually, if you move to the next slide, just one, please, then you'll see how, well, actually TIP and what we're doing is even broader than just radio and transport alone. We're engaged into open core. We do have non-terrestrial connectivity solutions also ramping up. We're working on open Wi-Fi. Today, actually, we are launching a new fixed broadband project group that's going to be chaired by one colleague of mine in Vodafone and one colleague in Telefonica. We are also beyond technology, looking at smart cities, looking at private networks or network as a service. So it's a complete portfolio. Now, what it is that we are doing in TIP in all this ecosystem, if we move to the next slide, you'll see, I think the most important things to get the disaggregation happening, I would say there are two. One is we need to provide clarity and certainty. And the second one is we need to avoid fragmentation and duplication of effort. And everything we do in TIP is about, one of these two things. So you can see how in our TIP model, we start with looking after the roadmap. What does this mean? Well, if you are an operator and you're thinking on rolling out Open RAN or DCSG or a router, disaggregated router, you don't need to put the requirements all by yourself. Come to TIP, join us. This work has already been done. Join 100 other operators who've actually done that piece of work, so that you make sure that you are endorsing something that is global and is not just one voice, and you're going to drive something that only you will buy. Equally, if you're a vendor, you may want to come and look at the requirements, make sure that you are compliant, but maybe more importantly, then get your products and solutions tested and validated. And new this year, by the way, we have launched a series of ribbons and badges that actually certify that you've been tested in the lab or by an operator. When this is translated into numbers, if you move to the next slide, you'll see that in 2021 alone, we've published more than 40 technical requirement specification documents. We've had more than 35 tests and validations in the lab or on trials that are, some of them, still undergoing. And by end of year, we will have more than 60 product listing that will get either a ribbon or a badge, which is a concept that is gaining traction because it's very useful. If you go to the next slide, you'll see how more and more companies are actually working to get their badge or ribbon, which will add value to their product portfolio by simply giving a testimony that this has been validated in one of our labs, or actually in one trial by an operator, which is great. So all in all, I think we're making substantial progress. But rather than me talking about it, let me move on to the most interesting part, which is the discussion with Mr. Ihab Tarazi. So Ihab, good morning for you. I think it's very early.
Hi, Iago. Good to be on the call with you. This is fun to be working together like this again.
Indeed. So I think it's been 2 years for Dell to be part of TIP, and you joined the board as a director in January this year. So tell me, what are your impressions?
Well, first of all, I knew most of the board members from before, but I really enjoy all the interaction, getting to work with Iago, Juan Carlos, Carolyn, Iran, everybody else on the board. Has been very eye-opening to see the level of depth of discussions and all the engagement and the focus. So I'm really excited to be part of that team and working together to solve. We all share the same passion for disaggregation. And I think we have a very important mission given, the tremendous demands across both 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, broadband, and a lot of these things are accelerating and looking for those solutions. So it's really exciting to be driving that jointly. Since we joined, we have been very active with TIP. So we've joined many of the working teams. We've added some members on the technical committee. We've also got very deep into DCSG, where we see the biggest opportunity for transport using, some new operating systems to unlock some of the requirements that we need and being able to deploy equipment. We have put our key servers for Edge and Core in the TIP Exchange, which is the XR11 and 12. Those were specifically designed for Edge deployment, as well as the 750, which is a very powerful two-socket server that is very important for 5G Core and many of the capabilities. And I would say we're just starting. We're gonna get involved into 5G, private wireless, and other capabilities as we go. But I think it's been very fruitful, very exciting, and lots of good momentum.
I very much agree. I think Dell is a fantastic partner and a fantastic member in TIP and driving a lot of contribution. And I think apart from all that, some other good things happened to Dell Technologies this year. So as part of our announcement in Vodafone, when we said which vendors we're going to be using for the rollout of Open RAN in the UK, you were actually one of the major partners. So can you tell us your impressions on that too? What kind of progress have we been making?
We were very excited to be selected to provide the Edge server, and that was one of the highlights for Dell in this space. I think everybody knows how advanced Vodafone is in this disaggregated model and the global footprint and tremendous technology. So being able to work with you on that is probably one of the highlights I have had the last 12 months. So thank you so much, Iago, and the rest of the team. What it did, it accelerated our engagement with TIP because now we started to work even much closer on the architecture for ORAN, Open RAN that's coming through TIP, because this is what we want to be able to support and meet. So I think this is just the beginning, and it's an exciting milestone to focus everybody on an actual commercial deployment. As you said, Iago, the technology is here. Now it's about accelerating commercialization, and this is a huge step forward.
Yeah, I fully agree. So in your view, what would you say that we could do that would help accelerating that adoption and reality?
I think the acceleration is starting. Part of the journey has been setting all this new disaggregated model in place, as you talked about, Iago. All the work you've done and the rest of the team the last 4 years have been critical for the industry. This is how you make large ecosystems work, and I think TIP is #1 foundation driving a very good open model. So thanks to all your work, Iago, for all of us, for the whole industry. But now what's happening is the technology is becoming available, which means there's new CPU options, more powerful, there's new accelerators, the multiple diverse silicon, and also some networking capabilities. Those were not available a couple of years ago. Now they're all available. So what needs to happen now, which is what we're all working on, is to get all this technology into this ecosystem and into the architecture that we have for all these disaggregated components. And that will deliver TCO and performance that people are looking for. So I'm really excited about the next 12 months to 24 months when all these new technology capabilities will go in. We're making a lot of investment as Dell into this space, as you know well, Iago, and we will continue to put our capabilities on the TIP Exchange and continue to engage, and that will provide new capabilities to many of our community to be able to implement.
I think that one of the single most frequently asked questions that I get is when do we think that Open Run is going to be ready for rollout? I hope it's clear from this keynote that, and I hope you agree with me as well, that it's actually ready now, and you can roll it out now. Now, would I just start with the dense urban environment? Probably not. However, if you're gonna roll out in suburban or rural, you could start today. You could do 4G, you could do 5G FTD, and in less than a year, I am very confident that you will be able to do massive MIMO with confidence. Is that something that you would agree, Ihab? And in your view, what do you think will come next for Open Run after all this?
Yeah, I completely agree with your statement, Iago. And I also would say we know how this world works. You can't just deploy something in one day. Every new technology, if you remember 4G, any of those broadband, fiber to the home, they take many years to implement. But the implementation always starts when some technology is available, and we're at that stage. So any operator now that is not deploying open and of some sort, they're probably falling behind the curve because everybody's learning and experimenting. So there's no like one big day here, but the deployment definitely started and the ecosystem is ready. And it will be exciting to see how this keeps delivering enormous capabilities and more TCO over the next few years.
I very much agree. Thank you very much for being with us today, Ihab, and also thank you very much for your contribution to the world of TIP and Dell Technologies as a member. Thank you. So before giving it back to Roy, maybe some final remarks just to summarize this keynote, and a particular call to operators. So if you are an operator, you're thinking on rolling out Open Run. So first of all, I hope it's clear that you can actually start with confidence today. You're not the only one. And actually, I think the best way to accelerate the Open Run commercial reality is to have more and more operators starting to roll out. And I think it's the right time for doing that. Now, apart from that, if you are an operator, you may want to join us in TIP because we've done a lot of work in understanding the roadmap, in understanding, gathering, consolidating, and harmonizing the requirements, and then mapping them into the roadmap of the specific vendors. You do not need to do that in isolation. Come to us, get the requirements, they're done, they're endorsed by a majority of operators, and we can point you in the right direction, signaling where in the vendor landscape you can actually get what you're looking for. And if you're a vendor, for very much the same reason, you want to come, because you will get a clean set of requirements that you'll be sure that there'll be demand behind them, because there are hundreds of operators who want to actually buy those products. So you don't need to guess, you don't need to figure out, you don't need to take unnecessary risk. Just use the requirements that we have and use our processes for test and trial and validation. So with that, thank you all very much for listening. And I give it back to Roy. I look forward to the rest of the TIP Insight agenda. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Iago, and thank you, Ihab, for a very enlightening chat, and as well in depicting the mission of the Telecom Infra project. And TIP, I think, as you say, has been a huge force for pushing this aggregation and the technology forward across the board, right? Whether it's transport or RAN or even Wi-Fi, it's making a huge splash. Excellent. So we're going to go to the next session, but before we do that, I just want to point out that these kinds of events are not possible without the support of our sponsors. And you just heard, from Iago and Ihab, an excellent conversation. And so if you enjoyed that, know that, these things need support. And so I want to thank the sponsors for today, for today's TIP Insight 2021. And the sponsors are IP Infusion, Mavenir, Parallel Wireless, Quali, and Vector Data. And so the TIP and the members, thank you for your support to make events like this possible. And I'm sure audience, you appreciate that as well. All right, let's move on to the next session. The next session, when I first saw the agenda, I was very curious in terms of the participation of the IFC, and I'm like, wait, isn't the IFC an organization that's in finance? So IFC is the International Finance Corporation. It's part of the World Bank, and I'm like, what is the World Bank doing here? Well, we're going to find out very shortly. So up next, we have a fireside chat, and in that fireside chat, we're going to have David Nowicki, and we're going to have Erica Noda. And so David's going to chat with Erica about the role of IFC with regard to the TIP. And so let me turn it over to David to get started.
Well, thank you, Roy, and hello, Erica.
Hi, Dave.
Great to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great. Very excited to chat with you about business model innovation and how it advances connectivity. I think we should just start with the IFC, right? We should start with who you are and how you make infrastructure investments, and also how you look at this early stage upstream area, which is so important to this kind of an effort.
Sure. So as you know, IFC is the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. We share the same mission as the World Bank of ending extreme poverty and promoting shared prosperity. We're present in over 100 countries, and we're the largest emerging market focused investor globally. In the telecommunications space, we have been investing in the sector for over 5 decades now. Ever since we invested in a long distance telephony company in the Philippines in the 60s. Today we do a significant portion of financing provided by development finance institutions globally. Just to give you an idea, the last fiscal year we did over $1 billion in financing and mobilizations across the emerging markets. And as per your question, Dave, on upstream, more recently, IFC recognized the need for us to intervene more upstream. In other words, for us to work more proactively with projects in the pre-bankability stage. This means us developing and structuring projects and, if needed, unlock bottlenecks in order to facilitate financing, right? And this is necessary to make real dent, in our view, because liquidity has increased in some parts of the emerging world, but the harder projects getting left behind. And some of these projects are really critical in unlocking connectivity.
Great. Very impressive to hear that 1 billion. And also the emphasis on the upstream investments that's so critical to what we're doing here. There's so much overlap in terms of the vision, right, between IFC and TIP and what we're doing with advancing connectivity. And that's why we're really so excited about this partnership that was announced recently. If you could tell us a little bit more about what led up to that and also where that's all headed.
Sure. TIP provides a very unique forum, in my view, with the participation of very broadly scoped members, right, ranging from founders, operators, policymakers, and industry stakeholders such as ourselves. We don't take partnerships lightly, but we are collaborating with TIP because the dialogue at TIP serves to guide problem solving around issues of innovation and also affordability, right? And today the issue is not just connectivity, but it's also affordability and usage of the internet. So we do think that we need to accelerate the deployment of new and more cost-effective ways to deliver connectivity. And this is the case particularly in areas of the world and for segments of the population that is underserved.
Great. And let's talk really more about innovation, because that was a central theme of the partnership. And it's also the underlying theme of what we're talking about here at Insights today. Why is innovation, in your mind, so critical to advance connectivity?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it's essentially because there is a bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
There is a bottleneck, and we really need to lower the break-even point of network deployment in order to improve availability, but also affordability and quality of connectivity.
What types of innovations are needed there?
Yeah, the type of, so technology, clearly critical, right? So, but we think that also innovation in business models are also necessary for us to get there.
Yeah.
Sometimes, unfortunately, it takes more than just technology to expand connectivity. And we really share the view of the TIP participants embracing the need for business model innovation in their working groups. And one such example is the NAS Solutions Group.
Great, great, great. Let me talk a little bit more about the NAS Solutions Group since you mentioned it. Thank you for mentioning it. I'll just introduce it so that we're all on the same page here. So lots of times NAS can mean different things to different people. It's network as a service. And what we're really talking about here is a neutral host player, a third party that owns and operates and deploys the network. And they form partnerships with MNOs. Partnerships that involve maybe revenue sharing. They effectively act like a wholesaler. That's the kind of NAS, that's what the NAS Solutions Group is working on. And one of the motivations for this, of course, is just to maximize infrastructure sharing, including active infrastructure sharing. And this will be lowering CapEx, lowering OpEx. The general principle is, the way we see it is kind of, you should build one network in places where it's not practical to build many networks, and they often don't get built at all. This approach really can lower barriers to entry for MNOs and service providers, and it can also lead to greater user choice and greater internet adoption, and that usually drives more demand for higher performing networks. So all good things. So as you said, TIP recently formed the NAS Solutions Group, and the partnership is centering around that. And this is really a global collaboration hub to drive more deployments of NAS type models. And in fact, there's a lot of commercial evidence of this progress already, but there's a lot of countries where it hasn't gotten started yet off the ground. And we'd like to drive the deployment of more market trials and do this together so that all the stakeholders in the ecosystem can see the benefits and kind of play it out and be the catalyst. So along these lines, in addition to technical and commercial expertise, the NAS Solutions Group is going to bring together a support mechanism also for funding. And that will be essential to new entrepreneurs and so forth that are going to enter into this space and try to become a NASCO, or maybe somebody that's already doing it in one market and wants to move into a different market, right? So along those lines, we're going to be forming this investor roundtable, and so happy to have IFC's involvement centering here and really talking about how to structure it and how to give advice. So what are some of your early thoughts there about the structuring of those types of investments?
Yeah, thank you. So IFC is the first partner, financial partner of TIP, and we're delighted, right? We're collaborating to essentially develop a set of minimum criteria for projects to be able to attract early stage funding. And we're hoping that by doing this, we will be able to crowd in more projects and more investors in NAS projects. When we talk about minimum set of criteria, things that we have in mind are sustainability, including financial sustainability, but also things like presence of market trial plans that validates business models, or wholesale contracts with operators and service providers. And of course, enabling regulatory policy and regulatory environment is critical. And so are institutional strength in the places where NAS models are deployed.
Great. That's perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. So let's wrap up with overall investment opportunity. Let's say that there's other investors out there, ecosystem players looking to enter into this space or understand more about it. What advice can you give them? What can you tell them about this infrastructure opportunity?
So IFC has invested at the frontier of the sector very often, I mean, in emerging markets, right? And it has paid off. It has paid off from both developmental and financial perspectives. We see investing at the frontier as an opportunity because it creates value for the overall ecosystem. I think one good example is the tower sector. I think IFC was an early investor in IHS Towers, if you know the company. And
Yes.
the company, when we invested, it had just over 300 towers. Today, it's a company that is present in multiple continents, and it recently listed at the New York Stock Exchange.
Oh, wow.
So investing in new business models doesn't come without challenges, especially in emerging markets. But we're hoping to lend our structuring capabilities, and we think that the timing to capture this opportunity is now.
That's great. Thank you so much, Erica. This has been fantastic. We're thrilled to have the IFC here today. We're thrilled to have IFC in terms of the overall partnership, and we're really excited about where things are going. Looking forward to working with all of you and everybody else along the way. So thank you so much, and we will now go back to Roy.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Erica. And that was an excellent discussion around the role of an organization, which I would not have expected to see at TIP, but now it's pretty obvious and pretty clear what contributions that they can have and how they can accelerate the deployment of infrastructure, especially in undeveloped areas of the world. So definitely, I see a good partnership on that front. Very good. Well, what we're going to talk about next is something that quite exciting for me. I've been talking to the Open Wi-Fi group at TIP for some time now, and I'm a big fan of a lot of the efforts that they have in the space. And they're driving a lot of innovation throughout and lowering the barrier to adoption of enterprise-grade, carrier-grade Wi-Fi across the board. We're going to see a real live example of this that being rolled out. We're going to talk about Open Wi-Fi in the context of connecting education in Africa. So this next session, this next conversation is going to be led by Philip Zindler, who is a director at Deloitte, and he will be moderating. And in this session, we have a couple other panelists or participants as well. So in addition to Philip, we have Meoli Kashoda, who is executive director at KNET, and we have Tony Webela, who is the co-founder and the CTO of Atlansis. So I'm going to try to turn it over to Philip here and see if we succeed. Well, in progress of succeeding, so we'll see if that. We'll give it a try again.
Thanks for the introduction, Roy. I really appreciate, super excited to be here today talking about TIP Open Wi-Fi in Africa. And as we all have seen, there was a recent announcement of KNET, the first open access Wi-Fi deployment in Africa, in Kenya. And today I have with me Meoli and Tony. Super excited to have you on board, guys. Meoli, first question from my side. KNET with this massive announcement for Kenya and for Africa, what does it mean? What are you doing? Tell us a bit about it.
Thank you, Philip. Yes, we are excited about this launch of the first deployment of TIP Africa Wi-Fi, Open Wi-Fi in Africa. Yes, we are going to deploy it at one of our universities in Nairobi. It's Kenyatta University. Is a large university with a large number of students, and we are going to be deploying it, and it will be something that is exciting to the university and to the students, because especially during this period of COVID-19 pandemic, Wi-Fi is really important for students, for faculty, for everyone.
Thanks, Meoli. Really appreciate this introduction. Now, open Wi-Fi has been on the table for a couple of years, and people were always doubting. Now, this is the first commercial launch in Kenya. Where do you see the benefits for the students, for the university, and even beyond that, right? Where are the possibilities ending for the Kenyan and for the African market with such a landmark project?
Right. We over the last few years, we've been supporting universities with the design of their Wi-Fi coverage, because the most important thing about today is that universities and educational institutions would have adequate Wi-Fi coverage. And we have been using many technologies. Each of them comes with its own controller. It comes with its own technology, and our engineers need to keep learning new proprietary ways of doing things. And with open Wi-Fi, the promise is that once we have the engineering expertise for open Wi-Fi and the controller, we have a lot more access to the technology because it's open source technology. And therefore we will not be having to adapt to so many different vendors coming in with their own proprietary solutions. But we'll be able to, even if we are working with many vendors, but the technology will be more or less the same for all of them. And it gives us great flexibility in selecting the partners that we work with, because the technology they are working with is what does not change. And therefore we'll only be changing need the vendor provider. So that's the exciting, because it makes it possible for us to scale our solutions. And but the other thing is that this is the first time we shall be using a SaaS type of a controller, and we are excited because that will also be something that the research community will pick up. They can pick up the data collected. They can modify it, and because it's open source, even customize it. So we see in the future a real African solution in the Wi-Fi space, both in the hardware and in the software.
Meoli, thanks so much. That brings me to a question for you, Tony, right? Being the glue between different technology components have always been the challenge for the operators to switch from an OEM vendor environment to open architecture, right? Tony, you're the first open SI, so to say, in Africa, and you have been part of this incredible journey for the Keynote announcement. What is your learning from it, and how do you see this case study being a prime example for many more to come?
Thanks, Philip. We as Atlansis, we position ourselves as an open OEM. Being an open OEM means we like bringing the goodness of open architecture, open software to the wider community, and in this particular case to Kenya and Africa. As a TIP member, we are also aware of how the technology is evolving, and we pass on this knowledge to our clients, and the uptake has been very well taken, for example, with Prof, and how we managed to build this opportunity into fruition. One thing is based on our team's capabilities and also Prof's team. There's a good work that's coming up in terms of how we shall leverage on this in order to make sure that for other institutions that would need this, it would be a well-managed and a well-thought-out solution, and also it will be centrally managed by both KenNet and ourselves. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tony. Also, two questions that spark my interest here on this, right? This must have been an amazing journey for you, or it's just a journey starting, right? So what have been the challenges that you experienced on it? And what are the benefits that you see beyond universities? I mean, connecting students in Africa is all our prime, kind of goal, right? But the emerging opportunities are larger. So first question, what are the challenges that you've seen? And then how can we multiply that into Africa for many, many other environments?
Thanks, Philip. One of the things that we have seen over the few years that we have been operating in Africa is access to technology, and in this regards to open technology. The biggest challenge has been closed technology, where you would find that the software is not very configurable or is not very flexible. And most of the time you'd find that for you to get the evolved technology, you would have to procure more equipment and replace the older one. In our case, we felt that would never be the best way to do things, because as an open OEM, we know what it is to give somebody some level of control on both the hardware and the software. So across Africa, across Kenya, you will find there are various institutions and also use cases where TIP will work. For example, public areas, these places like other institutions, not necessarily education. You'd even find possibly sports events where you'd want people to, for example, in a stadium, would have the best comfortable experience by using open Wi-Fi. Thank you.
Perfect example. Thanks so much, Tony. Coming to the domestic ecosystem, right? We touched a little bit on it, but seeing, KNet's landmark project and Meoli, really congratulations again. Superb launch. I think it's going to be super successful. It's already showing success. But in this African ecosystem, how do we make sure? And I talk about the three of us here taking us, under scrutiny to make it happen. What do we need to do to further enhance and prosper an ecosystem that can provide more open Wi-Fi systems and deploy much, much quicker, because connectivity is needed in Africa? Meoli, maybe you asking you first.
Thank you, Philip. I think the first thing that maybe just speaking to what Tony was just picking up from what Tony was talking about, the promise of open technology and open Wi-Fi. Maybe it's just to explain that for us at Kenya Education Network, we have had the value of openness. And the promise for openness is because we are part of a university and research ecosystem of Kenya, and we promote innovations. We take in young engineers, and we would like them to be able to experiment with technology, kind of literally take it apart and build it. And when you have open source software, you are able to experiment, customize it, and we do that quite a lot for other operations. Even our network operating for our NOC, the Network Operations Center, is all driven by open source software. Our virtualization platform is open. So this is going to be yet another opportunity to experiment with open technology in the open Wi-Fi space. But having said that, the launch we are taking is just the beginning. We have close to 70 universities that are members of our community, and they serve close to over 500,000 students, university students. And at this time, the Wi-Fi coverage, according to us, is totally inadequate. So what we want, what we would like, the promise we see and the expectation we have is that we'll be able to roll out something that can work at scale for all the 70 universities to serve large numbers of students. And that's just university. We've got the tertiary colleges. Again, they are also an equal large number with many institutions that are already our members. So we've got the broadband network infrastructure that supports that. And all we need is now that campus infrastructure. Maybe just to mention, now these stories can be replicated in other African countries, because what is in Kenya is not unique to Kenya. It's exactly the same story in Uganda, in Tanzania. So kind of the opportunity is huge. And we are excited. We are going to record. This is the start, and we are going to see the fruits of this, and hopefully we'll have many, many more access points deployed in the next 1 year. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Meoli. Really appreciate it. Super excited to hear that there's, a network of campus conglomerate basically that you can extend to even in the next phase, right? So really excited to hear about that and the partnerships that you have there from a university level. Tony, when you look at the African ecosystem for open Wi-Fi, right? What is required in the next 12 months for us to do a project like this 10 times over?
What's required, I believe, is quite a bit of evangelism. We need to make as much noise as we can about this, share the excitement, and have all our foot soldiers out there pushing this as the best thing that has come out of Wi-Fi ever since.
Very, very pragmatic answer, Tony. I love it. And we're going to do this together. So the three of us plus our dear friends from TIP that have been so supportive in the last couple of months and over the last couple of years really have to do that, Tony, together with us. That brings me to the last question, right? TIP, I mean, open Wi-Fi as one of the open architectures, right? This integrated networks being a topic all over the show, from radio access technologies, RAN, even for the mobile operators, but here we talk about Wi-Fi, right? So what are the benefits that you have been seeing to work with TIP over the last 12 months? Meoli, let me start with you.
Right. Well, I think I've enjoyed working with TIP because this is a new technology, and obviously we needed to solve the local problem, and the local problem of the broadband campus network itself. We have no problem of the internet connectivity to the campus itself. It's the broadband connectivity within the campus. So they have really supported us and taken time also to explain the different players, especially the controller, the people with experience with the controller. And especially we are kind of excited by the things we can do with the controller, including open roaming.
One of the key benefits that we are getting from this is that we are latching on to technology from the point of research and development, all the way to testing and also to actually implementing the technology. So for our team, they take part in TIP meetings and sessions, and they are aware of where the technology is, where it is going, and the various concerns that happen, how they're being mitigated, and how finally the product gets to be ready. With that, I can tell you, being an open OEM, the headache of knowing where the technology is going is now something of the past. Now we are very sure of where the technology is going.
With this being said, Tony and Meoli, thanks so much for your contribution today. Really looking forward to this landmark project to explode in Africa and be multiplied. Thank you, TIP community. Thanks, audience. Handing over back to you, Roy. See you next time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Philip, and thank you, Mayoli and Tony. That was an excellent discussion and quite inspiring. I mean, 70 campuses potentially to start and then beyond, right? And not just in Kenya, but as you heard, across Uganda, across a lot of other countries as well, and not just in the African continent, but beyond, right? So I think there is a lot of promise for something like open Wi-Fi. And in situations where maybe you have the broadband access and the WAN taken care of, but are looking for solutions for campus access, open Wi-Fi represents a new generation of architecture and solutions that you can build on. And as you heard from both Mayoli and Tony, there's interest in taking the controller and doing some fun things and important things with it that go beyond just roaming. And so definitely an inspiring story, and looking forward to seeing that technology roll out across the continent. All right, well, we're going to go from open Wi-Fi to another hot topic, Open RAN. We're going to talk about Open RAN and the role of an SI. Specifically, we're going to talk about Axiata's rollout Open RAN and how to pave the way for an SI-led deployment. So in this next session, we'll be hearing from Axiata, obviously, and Infosys. And the conversation is going to be led by Brian, who is Brian Tan is the director of Meta Connectivity in the APAC region. And we're all going to hear from Ranga of Axiata and Samra over at Infosys. So let's see if we are able to, the technology gods will be with us as we switch over to Brian to moderate the next session. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Roy. Good day to everyone. My name is Brian, and I'll be moderating today's fireside chat. I'm honored to be joined by Ranga Kariyawasam from Axiata Group and Samra Baruchu from Infosys. Axiata is a APAC-based group operator with opcos across 6 countries, ranging from Malaysia, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, Cambodia. So these span the gamut from Malaysia, who's transitioning from 4G to 5G, to others who are still building out 4G coverage and capacity. Infosys is a global system integrator with key services bench across many APAC countries, including those Axiata are operating in. In addition, it brings key capabilities in network automation to drive network efficiencies, leveraging the open interfaces created in Open RAN. So we start, Ranga, with the first question for you. Ranga, in June, Axiata made a really bold announcement this year, where you're positioning for network leadership across your OpCo footprint, leveraging Open RAN to modernize your network with commercial deployments of 2G and 4G. Can you tell us more about that announcement?
Yeah, hi, Brian, and hi, everyone. It's good to be contributing to Deep Insights Forum. Yes, we did do our announcements in June, yes. And that's not just a few months of work. It has been sort of painstaking work for about 1.5 years or so. We may know bits and pieces about that. So we've started looking at Open RAN and actually open networks from 1.5 years back. We've studied it, we've strategized our roadmap, and we've looked at the partners who we can further our journey with. And with that background studies, we set about our Open RAN journey. Right? We identified under open networks, Open RAN is the first matured part of or the segment of open network, and there were a lot of other references in the world also. So we set about our journey. We've ran commercial POCs, and I say commercial POCs with commercial traffic. We are an operator having 6 of course in Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. So we wanted to look at how Open RAN works in a couple of our markets, not just one lab POC on the field, how customers would respond, etc. So we went and did a couple of POCs, carrying commercial service, fairly large, with our partners, selected partners, Mavenir, Parallel Wireless, and Infosys was filling in as the system integrator in these trials. Now, what we saw is that we had to do a lot more work during first few months, 3 to 4 months. Typically, I mean that everyone probably knows this scenario that you had to work a lot on the system, hardware tuning, as well, especially software algorithm related tuning quite extensively with the software partners. So we had to go down to that level, even to recalibrate the scheduler of. So with that, by April, May, we were at a good place in terms of performance, quite similar to the performance that we yield from the existing incumbents of ours. Right? So with that, we decided to announce, by the way, the POCs were done in Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and as well as in Indonesia. In different contexts, we can discuss about that later. So performance was good, and we decided to go public with that. And then we are quite happy with what we have right now, and we are planning to do larger scale commercial deployment in 2022, at least in 3 or 4 markets. So right now we are firming up the plans and then engaging with our partners for that. Yes.
That's awesome. So it's been a journey, like you said, you know, and you had to kind of roll up your sleeves, fine-tune hardware, fine-tune software, even getting to details like scheduling on the RAN. So what are the use cases Axiata is looking for to use Open RAN for? And what are the specific challenges you see that leads you to partner with SIs on this journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. To answer that question, let us go back to our rationale, right? Why we wanted to do this in the first place, right? I mean, what was our thought process behind it? Now, if you look at Open RAN, I mean, a couple of operators have already deployed, and we have a large-scale deployment in Japan already, right? But those were more like 4G, more developed markets, 4G, 5G, fiber available in abundance. So you have every site fiberized. But look at our footprint, Axiata markets, right? Southeast Asia and Asia for that matter. Except probably for Malaysia, the other ones are, I would call, probably emerging, right, in terms of market maturity and infrastructure maturity of the country. Now, so we needed to find, our profile is different, right? We have a low ARPU profile, a very long tail kind of market in terms of geography and market itself, right? Capabilities. We need voice in 2G, not voice in 4G, VoLTE, right? A lot of our markets are still dependent on 2G for voice. 3G, we are planning to shut down this. Microwave backhaul, fiberization is quite expensive, right? And in certain cases in Indonesia, satellite backhaul as well. So this is the profile, and then the cost per GB of production for us in these profiles in these kind of markets would be very high if you were to go to an incumbent solution. So this is where we were trying to figure out how we can go and serve these markets with much better cost structures, right? So that's where Open RAN came in first, and then we saw the importance of Open RAN in terms of development, right, automation, and then improving the operational cost, and how we can develop features for ourselves, and then we probably have an edge over the competition even, right? So these things came in. So the use cases we are looking at actually are towards that kind of market with 2G and 4G in the same radio, like single RAN, Open RAN, and then maybe non-ideal backhaul, like microwave backhaul, even in satellite backhaul. So that's the product that we are looking at right now, and that's the one that we have trialed and matured also as a solution with our partner. So that's what we are going to deploy across our footprint now come from next year onwards. Now, obviously, that's the immediate use case, but we, as others, see 5G as the main and probably the catalyst for Open RAN adoption as we go on. So that's that we are working on that. So that's about the use case stuff, right? So we wanted to ensure a solution that works for our kinds of markets, not so much develop infrastructure, right? That's key. The SI bit also comes in because we are a company. I mean, we have 6 operators who have been existing like for 20 years or so now. So we have a legacy as well in terms of people as well, right? So it is quite difficult to get people, this skill level of the people in a day or two to suit Open RAN, right? So we needed to have that expertise in software and integration skills, etc. Because we were dependent too much probably on the incumbent mainstream vendors for rollouts, for configurations, operation, everything. So we saw that void for the skill level, and as well as we were used to have this one single neck to choke, right? So there's a gap between expectation from typical operator side versus what's on offer from Open RAN ecosystem, right? So there's a big gap and a void there, so which we thought could be filled by system integrator. So that's where the system integrator role came in, but there needs to be more development around that, and then to see how they exactly fit into the ecosystem. So which we can also discuss if it happens. Yeah. So that's where the system integrator piece comes in for us. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for those insights. So broad range of use cases starting from 4G and then in the future moving to 5G, but clearly moving from a single turnkey type mindset to a disaggregated mindset. And then therefore the role of system integrators are really important.
Absolutely.
So Samrat, thank you for joining us from Melbourne. If I could ask you the next question, what is Infosys positioning in the Open RAN industry? And how is this relevant in the context that Ranga just shared?
Thank you, Brian and Ranga, and thank you definitely for the opportunity to be part of this forum. So Infosys has established engineering practice working with OEMs, service providers, and hyperscalers for the last 30 decades. And it's very exciting to see the emergence of new technologies that are completely transformational in nature and really reshaping the telecom industry itself. We work with OEMs as R&D partner, including on the Open RAN OEMs as well. So that gives us insights and supports in really developing these emerging technologies. But at the same time, we've been working with telecom industries for the last 3 decades, as I mentioned, in integrating, implementing, and defining the overall architecture itself, especially with the emergence of, with the solution of a disaggregated, virtualized, and software-defined nature of the solution. We bring a lot of, insights and knowledge in implementing these solutions. You briefly touched on 5G as well, and with 5G technology itself, it's very much an industry-led solutions as well. So Infosys, we also work across many other industries where they will be consuming 5G solutions as well, and with Open RAN. So that gives us then access to not just be bringing the telecom and telecom OEM knowledge, but also really expanding our coverage across other industries and supporting with the use cases, which is the next generation of revenue for the telcos itself. So when we look at Open RAN, it's multiple systems, multiple solutions that come together, Infosys' role in that really is to play as the ecosystem integrator, bringing the OEMs, bringing the infrastructure and field services partner, and working on the best practices with industry consortiums such as TIP to define them and then really bring them to life. So we are responsible for the deployment and commissioning of the services. As part of that, we also bring a lot of the tools and the automations for these functions, such as deployment, commissioning, and operational support. These are a lot of tools that have been leveraged from past technologies, but also creating new automation and deployment tools in the process. And finally, we are leveraging our 5G, the Infosys 5G Living Lab, really to ideate, co-create, and validate a lot of the solutions, because a lot of it is new. There's a lot of creation and development and ideation in the process as well.
Thank you. So you mentioned creation of tools and automation specifically. I know Infosys has been deeply involved in developing these automation tools for Open RAN. What in your mind are some of the automations and benefits to service providers such as Axiata?
Yeah. Look, great question. One of the, I guess, when we look at the ORAN solution, there's a lot of software in there. It's as much as them leveraging the hardware components off the shelf, right? And when we're dealing with, software-based solution, then it does provide an avenue to enable automation on a lot of activities such as the lifecycle management, provisioning, and the operation aspects of it. So we've been working closely with TIP, as you mentioned, in actually defining and developing these automation frameworks, and then integrating it this with Axiata as part of the production environment during the deployment cycle that Ranga mentioned. Some examples of automation focus areas that we've been working on, such as zero-touch provisioning, low-touch provisioning itself. The benefits, it's about reducing the life cycle, the cycle time to reduction, the operator efficiency, especially improving quality when we're actually reducing manual interventions by the operator, which ultimately leads to, bringing the cost down itself, but, trying to drive benefits, in excess of 30% and above in the whole cycle time, as well as in the operations of the environment.
Thank you. So maybe I could ask both of you, you're both representative of very big companies. So what does TIP bring to the table for both of you? Ranga, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Right. Now, see, let's look at the ecosystem and industry, right? It's very fragmented when it comes to Open RAN state, right? So we have the mainstream telco mobile industry, 3G, 3GPP, very standardized and more streamlined. And if you come to the Open RAN ecosystem, it's heavily fragmented, right? So we need somebody to orchestrate this. We know we have ORAN specifications we've done, but then we need to have somebody to orchestrate this entire thing so that it can bit more be streamlined, right? Not probably to the same degree as the mainstream industry, but a bit more streamlined, because the current state is like we have multiple partners, multiple kind of tools, softwares, hardware, especially, right? I have a big concern around hardware. We need to have better quality hardware, right? So somebody needs to play this role of orchestrator, bringing everyone together and propelling the entire growth, right? So I think overall, on a high level, TIP could play that role, right? By bringing in all the different requirements of different operators around the world, right? And then having this harmonization between specs and standards, how to adapt them into environment now. Things like some of the programs like Even Star program, right? That is being run by FCL, right? So in terms of hardware, and then we've been also involved with some of these software. So that's the main area that in order to catalyze Open RAN, we need to have bit of harmonization of these different entities, right? Different spaces in the Open RAN ecosystem. That's very important. And then the framework for testing, operating, etc. Also, those are very important. So it could play a big role even there. And also automation related stuff. We know now if we take a particular product, a particular solution from someone, they have their own automation, zero touch provisioning, or low touch operation. I was throwing in a new case for SSV automation, right? Single site verification automation, right? So, I mean, this needs to become and harmonize into a similar setup, basically, so everyone can feed from, right? So that's the role I'm seeing, and also hardware, right? We need to be working with the hardware to ensure that high quality hardware is actually. I'm talking mainly about the radio, not so much servers, but the radio units actually, which I have still concerns on, right? So that's an important area that TIP could play. So we have a void for that kind of a role in the ecosystem. So that I believe is the role for TIP to fill in as well.
Thank you. So harmonizing, bringing the ecosystem together, test and validation, hardening the products. Samra, how about from an SI perspective?
Yeah, so everything Ranga mentioned, completely agree with you, and some of the automation tools that he mentioned, I mentioned earlier in the question as well, definitely fit into the, that picture. I have to recognize, TIP is playing as like that true global integrator of this very big, complex ecosystem. So actually applaud you guys for coming together and doing that itself. So and it has created the forum of not just creating the tools, but also really co-innovating and co-ideating. When we look at the Open RAN, clearly in this area, we've got 2G, 4G that is being tested. When we have 5G coming as well, I mean, TIP has a great access to the industry as well, together with the SIs. So how do we really, help create new cases, use cases that can be leveraged, right? Because really that next generation of telco must tap into the industry, right? And drive a lot more industry focus that are solutions that are bandwidth sensitive, time sensitive, quality sensitive. Another thing is really that creation of new solution, like security is a big issue that is happening with anything that is open, whether it's Open RAN or open networks itself. Every solution that we're playing at the edge, and we're going towards the edge itself, and really creates then the platform and the forum of coming up with new ideas. Like, for example, we are ideated around a 5G security framework that was, discussed with TIP, and now we're developing it together. It's really creating the form of saying, how do we, create a new framework and a solution towards 5G that is vendor agnostic, but it's also very lightweight, that we'll be able to put on top of the solution. So, it's a great, and anything open, it's about a consortium of people coming together, and even co-competition. So you have to co-create with your competition as well in this scenario. So.
Thank you for that really enlightened co-competition, right? You compete, but then you also cooperate at the same time. So thank you, Ranga and Samra, for joining me today and for so generously sharing your insight. Thank you. I know you've taken extra trouble to join us from Colombo and from Melbourne. So thank you again, and back to you, Roy.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Ranga and Samra as well. We definitely do have an international cast on today's TIP Insights 2021. Right, we're traveling from country to country. Up next, we're going to go from Open RAN to end-to-end, and then after that, we'll come back to transport and just hold it Open RAN thoughts for a little while. We actually have a panel coming up later on Open RAN. And once again, audience, thank you for being with us today. We have another hour, probably hour 15 of great content. So do stay with us. And for those of you where it's early morning, grab that cup of coffee. And for those of you who maybe it's in the afternoon, grab that cup of coffee as well. All right, excellent. So up next, we're going to talk about end-to-end. And specifically, we're going to talk about Orange and their end-to-end open and disaggregated journey. We have 3 panelists from Orange for this one. We have Olivier Simon, who is director of the Radio Innovation Group there. Jean-Louis Leroux, who is the VP of Global Wholesale and Enterprise Networks. And we have Veronica Quintuna Rodriguez, who is the head of the European Cooperative Research at Orange Innovation. And so they're going to talk about their end-to-end journey, and I'm sure there's plenty of lessons for us to learn. So I'm going to turn it over to Olivier. Again, let's see if this works out smoothly. So over to you, Olivier.
Okay, so thank you, Roy. Last year I was at the TIP Insight 2020. It was a very exciting event, and I really thought that this year I would be able to see you in person. Unfortunately, it will not be for this year. It may be for next year. However, I'm very happy to be with you today. I'm not alone this time. We will also have Jean-Louis Leroux, will speak about the transport network, and Veronica Quintuna Rodriguez will speak about the core network. So for us, openness is extremely important, but unlike what it may seem, openness is very difficult to realize. And I think TIP is really instrumental in managing openness organization and with the energy of their team. So as part of what they do, TIP is a platform. It's a platform that makes the link between different partners. Partners could be very different one to the other. There could be very big and very small partners from all over the world. TIP is also instrumental in gathering requirements, and from this requirement, enabling to go up to the end-to-end solution. TIP has also put in place a lot of test and validation projects, processes, and even labs. And finally, TIP has put in place the right tools that are needed to animate this project with such a high number of partners. So let's go directly in the concrete things. And we will start with the transport aspect with Jean-Louis. So Jean-Louis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Olivier. So hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Louis Leroux. I'm the head of Orange International Network Design and Deployment. And I'm very happy to be here with you today for the digital TIP 2021 conference. So the Orange International Network is a large tier 1 transport network with around 4,000 nodes and 10,000 links in 100 countries. We are carrying more than 20 terabits per second of traffic with a growth of 30% yearly. We transport basically data, voice, video, as well as roaming traffic. And we're currently transforming the way we build this network with objective to be much more efficient and flexible. Actually, we are transforming our network from a rigid box towards a Lego box, very flexible, where you can easily combine several network pieces to build an end-to-end service for your customers. For this, we are simplifying our core network pieces. We are simplifying our core transport backbone to do pure transit. And we are deploying a telco cloud layer to allow for a clear separation between network infrastructure and network services. And we are currently virtualizing or even containerizing most of our network service functions, such as WAN edge, security, voice, and 4G or 5G roaming. And we also rely more and more on open source when for us. This open disaggregation strategy is key for us to bring cost savings as well as to bring a huge flexibility and adaptability. And we start deploying the disaggregation as well in the backbone for the transport nodes. We have recently launched a transport network disaggregation program where we start with layer 2 switches, and we will continue progressively with layer 3 peer routers and provider edge routers as well. We are starting with layer 2 nodes because this is easier with limited impact and will provide fast benefits as we are deploying hundreds of nodes every year. In a nutshell, we buy white box hardware and integrate open source network operating system on it. It is an important evolution in our way of working. This is a challenge in terms of skills for a network operator like Orange. We are upskilling our network engineers to our software, and we are hiring pure software developers and CI/CD integrators. Our staff is really excited with those new way of working, and this is really paving the way for our future activity. But clearly, to succeed in this disaggregation journey, we cannot be alone. We are deeply involved in the TIP project. TIP is instrumental in this journey, helping to accelerate the development and deployment of those open, disaggregated, and standard-based technologies. As regards transport networks, we are involved in the Open Optical Packet Transport Group. OOPT works on the definition of open technologies, architectures, and interfaces in optical and IP networking. For instance, we are contributing to GNPY, which is an open source community developed library for building route planning and optimization tools in real-world meshed optical networks. We are also co-leading the MUST group on SDN requirements for transport. And more recently, we have started participating to the disaggregated open router group. We will have our first disaggregated switch up and running in our backbone within less than 9 months. And then we will continue with peer routers, with provider edge routers. And for provider edge routers, we will have a first live trial in 2022, and we will generalize in 2023. By the way, Idir Fodil, who is leading our transformation program, will give you more details during the OOPT panel soon. So as already mentioned, the triggers to move to disaggregation are, of course, the cost savings in the context of huge pressure on our network profitability. And for instance, on layer 2 disaggregated nodes, we are expecting 55% savings. But also, and more important, in addition to cost savings, it will provide us a huge flexibility, being able to easily add or remove features, being able to customize, and finally adapt to the very fast evolutions of customer demands. So this is the view for transport network. And now I will move the floor to my colleague Veronica to discuss about OpenCore. So Veronica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jean-Louis. And hello, everybody. So this is Veronica Quintuño, Future Network Expert at Orange Innovation. In the last year, I have been actively involved in TIP OpenCore Network project, which is for Orange a good opportunity to make telecom transformation a reality. OCN is making possible the implementation and experimentation of cloud native and openness principles. This enables not only cost efficient and interoperable networks, but particularly a time to market acceleration. Indeed, OCN enables Orange to test new, specific, and customized 5G use cases in lab or field trials, avoiding, a lengthy standardization and product specification process. OCN is also an open door to meet new actors coming from IT and cloud sectors, which particularly add value and contribute to the transition towards automated, flexible, and agile next generation networks and services. Orange has been engaged with OCN practically since launch. Orange is co-chairing the project together with Vodafone and co-leading application and services working group together with Facebook Connectivity. OCN has enabled the prioritization of two important use cases, fixed wireless access and 5G private networks, which respectively are key enablers to extend the connectivity and also to offer customized and dedicated networks to vertical industries. A white paper addressing the implementation scenarios for private networks has been made available and of course will be used for future experimental deployments. We have also contributed to the development of a badging process from the technical requirements definition, leading already to 2 products with requirement compliant ribbon listed in TIP Exchange. So this certification process is essentially relevant for operators as Orange in order to use compliant products evaluated or even tested by the OCN community. Indeed, Orange is planning to launch a fixed wireless access trial in Senegal, and we notably expect to build reproducible blueprints with OCN products. So I come back the floor to my colleague Olivier. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me guide you the Open RAN vision of Orange. So Orange, Open RAN is very clearly the next big breakthrough for 5G and beyond technology. And it's the technology of choice for us, for the radio access network, for a simple reason. It will happen anyway. So it's a technology trend that will happen, that we need to prepare, and that will give us some benefits, such as first, more flexibility in the way we use the radio access network. Thanks to open interface and hardware, software decoupling, we will have more flexibility in the way we build and operate the network. It's an opportunity as well to create new services, especially in the B2B domain. You know that with 5G, we have more and more diverse requirements from our customers. And with Open RAN, we will be able to build solutions that will adapt better to this requirement. And finally, it's also a system that will improve the energy efficiency with time, because with virtualization and with centralization, we will get some advantage that have been built in the IT domain and that will come as well to the radio access network domain. Let me give you a very concrete example of what we can do with Open RAN. RAN sharing. RAN sharing is extremely important for European operator. You may know that we have more than 50% of the European footprint that is shared between at least 2 operators. And with RAN sharing, currently, with the traditional solution, we just have one choice. Either we share or we don't share. If we share all the RAN. If we don't share, we don't share. And with Open RAN, we have a new option that is about sharing the hardware, but keeping a dedicated software. The advantage of sharing the hardware is that, of course, there is a large cost benefit because the cost of the hardware, the marginal cost of the hardware is taken by the 2 operators. but each operator is able to deploy its own vendor as the software, and to deploy exactly the feature that the operator wants, and to deploy at the rhythm the operator wants. This means that the two operators are not forced to some extent to deploy at the same rhythm. This will create new paradigm in which we will have both the cost efficiency of RAN sharing and the capability to differentiate as with a dedicated network. But this is just a simple example. There are many others. So we want to accelerate Open RAN. So how do we do to do so? We have signed MOU. We are cooperating with other European operators, with 4 other large operators, and we have signed a MOU on Open RAN with 2 goals. The first is to accelerate the readiness of the solution, and the second goal is to develop Open RAN in Europe, because different regions have different requirements, and with this MOU with other operators, we have clarified the requirement of European operator. And by the way, we have used TIP in order to organize the way this requirement will be accommodated with the solution that will be that will be deployed at the end. So we are going from specification to reality. We are going to paper from let's say paper definition to lab definition, and this is also why we have launched this Open RAN Integration Center here in Paris. And this Open RAN Integration Center is a lab in which we will be able to host a lot of different partners, big, small partners, European partners, but as well some partners from outside Europe. And this lab is also part of the TIP Community Lab network. This means that this lab will be used for projects such as TIP Open RAN, and it will be, sorry for that, by the way, it will be used as well in a network of labs with the other TIP Community Lab. We have involved, by the way, in TIP since the beginning in 2017, and it's amazing how the Open RAN has progressed from this time. 4 years ago, I remember the Open RAN was an idea. It was kind of R&D thing, but it was not yet a big trend in the industry. And currently in 2021, we see that the total investment in this domain is probably several billions of euro or dollars every year. So TIP brings benefits such as avoiding duplication of work. Thanks to TIP and thanks to this project with a lot of different ecosystem partners, we avoid to do several times the same thing. And TIP is also the place to convey the requirement and the needs of the industry. And thanks to test and validation, we go from the requirement to the signal when the technology is ready and to the final solution. So I would like to thank especially the TIP team for that. And Roy, over to you, Roy.
All right, thank you, Olivier, and thank you to the panel from Olivier Cessenly and Jean-Louis and Veronica Quintanilla as well. So thank you for sharing your insights across the board, right? Open Core, Open RAN, all the different opens that TIP is involved in, and a lot of progress. And we're not done with Open RAN, as I said, it's going to be more. But before we do that, we're going to talk about transport. So specifically open transport, so OOPT, or Open Optical and Packet Transport. Before we get into a panel discussion around OOPT and some of the test validation stuff, we're going to hear from some of the TIP members, vendor testimonials around their participation and why they're participating in an OOPT. So let's send it over to some video testimonials from our TIP members. Let's see if, again, this works.
Advent participates in TIP programs to help us align with operators and make it easier for us to develop products for them. We see that more and more operators are joining TIP because they understand the value of a common network architecture and control plane. And we see value in TIP's interop programs, marketplace concept, and the new testing and validation program. All of this will help our customers realize their vision of an open and multi-vendor network.
Hi, this is Ran Almog from DriveNets. We are a TIP participant because it carries the vision of democratizing network access via open disaggregated networking, which is also the vision of DriveNets. Being on the TIP exchange gives us visibility into service providers that have the right attitude of disaggregation and opens business opportunities for us as a company. We're working with the OOPT on both the DDBR and the BNG projects and are looking forward to moving into testing and validation stages.
Hi, I'm Sanjay Kumar from IP Infusion. I am a TIP participant because of the tremendous value we see in working with the OOPT project group to define and develop open and innovative disaggregated solutions. We also see tremendous benefit in working with the test and validation initiatives, as well as the TIP community labs in making disaggregation networks a reality. Last but not least, we value being on the TIP exchange to really help bring our disaggregated solutions to the market.
Fujitsu is a TIP member because we believe that open, disaggregated, and standards-based solutions can help deliver better connectivity for communities across the globe. We are collaborating with other industry pioneers within the TIP ecosystem to make open optical transport a reality for operators worldwide.
Hi, my name is Victor Lopez and I'm Product Line Manager in the Network Service Platform NSP in Nokia. NSP is our SDN controller for transport networks, that is IP and optics. We can interoperate with third-party devices using their standard interfaces, so the TIPMAS initiative is a great place for us in order to contribute with the rest of the industry in solutions that can facilitate the adoption of interoperable SDN technologies.
I'm a TIP participant, Ray, Technical Director of UP Space. We provide disaggregated transport network solutions and actively participate in TIP's OOPT project. It's a great opportunity for us to provide groundbreaking deliverables through the TIP exchange, as well as collaborating with the TIP ecosystem to validate our DCSG, DOR, and OpenBNG solutions.
Excellent, and thank you for that perspective. Thank you to the speakers and the vendor companies that are active participants in OOPT. You heard from Prayson, Ran, Sanjay, Rehan, Victor, and Ray, and you heard Sanjay talk a little bit about test and validation, which was what the topic of the next panel is. We're going to talk about common test and validation driving open transport technology adoption. And to do that, we have a couple of excellent speakers lined up. We first have Johan Juktas, who is Head of Transport and Network Strategy and Architecture at Telia. And then we have Lloyd Mpelele, who is General Manager at MTN. And then Idir Fodil, whom you heard mentioned earlier by Jean-Louis, who is International Networks Transformation Director at Orange. And we have Kenji Komaki, who is GM and Chief Architect at KDDI. So I'm going to turn it over to Johan to actually lead the next panel. Over to you, Johan.
Dear all, welcome and thanks for joining us today. My name is Johan Juktas. I'm the Head of Network Architecture in Telia Company. I'm recently also co-chair of the Open Optical Packet Transport Project Group in Telecom Infra Project. In the OOPT, we have a clear goal, and that is to accelerate innovation in optical and IP networks and ultimately help operators provide a better connectivity for communities all around the world. Today, we will be discussing with two of the most active members in OOPT community from MTN and Orange. These two operators are in the process of transforming their transport networks, and today we will discuss how TIP is supporting on their journey. But before we go there, let's have a first take and look on the most recent achievements in OOPT. Our community has made some significant progress during the last few months, and I will start with some of the more mature technologies in the community. Several operators continue to develop the DCSG to build a 5G-ready aggregation network. You have all seen the announcements made by Vivo in Brazil a few months ago, followed by a similar one from Afritel. This is currently deploying DCSG in several countries. MTN continues to make progress on the DCSG adaptation, but we will hear more about this in just a few minutes. In a similar way, disaggregated optical solutions continue to be a major trend in the optical industry. Several Cassini field trials has been completed recently, such as the DCI trial in Turkey by Turkcell and the CPQD-led trial in Brazil. As our community knows, our ambition is to continue to incubate new technologies that the operators, as myself, can deploy in our networks. I don't want to steal any thunder from my colleagues, but in a few minutes you will hear about the first commercial deployments of DDBR, the disaggregated distributed backbone router. I would also like to highlight some critical milestones in the OOPT journey. We have just launched several test and validation processes for our own developed technologies. Some examples are the DCSG and the MUST. Several solutions and providers have already been awarded with new ribbons. You should go and check the TIP Exchange for more information. Continuing with exciting news, during the last 6 months, several more solutions has been generally available. Some examples are the new SKUs from IP Infusion announced as part of their DCSG portfolio, and the new DCSG hardware variants provided by EdgeCore and UfiSpace. Finally, one of the most active subgroups in OOPT nowadays is MUST. We are now 9 Tier 1 operators collaborating together to accelerate the development and adoption of SDN technologies in the transport network. The initiative has produced several deliverables already, including requirement specifications and documents that defines how we want the APIs of IP routers, optical transponders, optical systems, IP, and optical SDN controllers. All of these specifications and requirements are available in our Confluence page. And I want to thank you to all our partners for making this possible. Hey Lloyd, it's great to have you with us today. I want to start by getting your reflections about one of the most mature programs that we run in OOPT, the DCSG. It seems that MTN is one of the leading adopters of DCSG in Africa as part of your Cassini strategy. What more can you tell us about it?
Yes, thanks, Johan. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege to be part of this panel here today. Yes, indeed, as MTN, we are very proud to have introduced DCSG in Africa. Back in 2019, we ran a lab test in our market in South Africa, which was very, very successful in a multi-vendor environment, and we were pleased with the result. And we followed through, and we made means to ensure that we go commercially into the field. And I'm happy to announce that today, as we speak, in Uganda, I think for the last 3 weeks or so, we've got 6 units that are running, and the KPIs are doing okay. So we are very excited about that. And with what we've been doing internally in the company, there's been lots of interest from all our other markets. So some of our colleagues in OOPT may be aware that we are also, will be deploying in Cameroon. So there's a consignment that we've received confirmation that it has arrived at port. So yeah, pretty exciting. We are very pleased to be trailblazers. in Africa. And we are looking forward to this. There's a lot of excitement within the company, lots of interest. And we are also working with our procurement, counterparts to ensure that it becomes a reality. So yes, very, very excited, and just looking forward to large-scale deployments across 21 of our markets in Africa and the Middle East. Thank you.
Fantastic. Ide, thank you for joining our panel today. We see Orange presence in TIP growing every day. What are the areas of the transport network that Orange wants to transform?
Many thanks, and I'm very happy to be part of this panel. To answer your question, the interest of Orange International Networks for the OOPT, as we are building and maintaining one of the main important transport network in the world, is to introduce agility and to move our networks to be real service enabler layer. So for those reasons, we absolutely need to have the most flexible possible networks in which we can, let's say, have all the control over the infrastructure. And this is why we have started a strong investigation in TIP on the transport. And currently our plans is to introduce the disaggregated core routers in maybe 2022 or maximum end of 2022 to have this in live trials.
Fantastic. So Lloyd, Ide just mentioned the core network as one of the area where they want to introduce disaggregated and open technologies. MTN is one of the leading operators behind projects like Phoenix. What are the benefits that you expect from these types of projects?
Yeah, well, once again, thank you, Johan. Really, I have to say, these are the exciting times. I mean, a couple of years back, you wouldn't have imagined that we'd be talking disaggregation in the core part, of transport, let alone transport, as a whole. So we are very, very excited about, this opportunity with OOPT. Maybe just a small background from an MTN perspective. We are in Phoenix. We are also on the wireless backhaul and as well as on the IP side of things. So very, very key active, participant in that. So when it's coming to Phoenix, we are very interested in the domain one because there's cost involved. Those that have operated DWDM optical kind of networks will understand what I'm talking about. We've got a huge challenge of the multi-vendor environment, which is ever getting complex. There's a challenge of the licensing models and how they work and how they really do not bring about the efficiency of using the equipment. And of course, the big problem that we are trying to resolve around the vendor login. So you're asking what we think the benefit should be. So we are hoping that by being part of Phoenix, we'll be able to address the limited interoperability that we are seeing. And we believe that if we resolve that, it will ease, the operational challenges in this multi-vendor environment, that I mentioned. So we're looking forward to it. So we're putting all our energies to make sure that that happens because it will unlock a lot of business value for us. And then there's a whole point of openness, to allow third-party components in order to leverage available hardware resources. I mean, you'd know that with the kind of proprietary systems that we have today, we don't make efficient use of what is already, invested in. So that's really one of the key reasons that we believe will benefit from. So we're really hoping, to reduce cost. in the entire environment while we're providing, scalability for our customers, allowing us to be flexible and adaptable. So yeah, that's pretty much what we think will benefit. Thanks, Johan.
Thank you, Lloyd. I think what you just said should resonate with a lot of the tier 1 and tier 2 operators around the globe. Definitely resonates with what we face in Telia as well.
Yes, indeed.
Idir, last one for you. Today we have heard several times that Orange plans to transform the transport network by introducing disaggregation. So how do you think TIP will enable that acceleration of transition in your day-to-day work?
Yes, as I said, the strategy today within Orange International Network is to go toward disaggregation by starting by, let's say, layer 2 equipments and using open source, and based on this go smoothly and quickly in order to move to PPE routers. The goal is to have this global disaggregated transport layer. How TIP can help? I think the first input or the first information is that TIP gather all the main stakeholders and actors in this ecosystem, in sense that we can consolidate and collaborate together in order to build the most powerful architecture and at the same time the most cost effective. This is the first topic on which TIP will help us. The second one is that we build architecture and solutions in order to fit the customer requirements and provide them with the best solutions. And you cannot build this in your, let's say, in your own lab, but you have to rely on many inputs coming from different actors. The third point is that Orange International Network is tier 1 operator, and with working with, let's say, mobile operator, fixed operator in TIP, we can like this capture all the requirements and be sure that we will provide the best network, disaggregated network.
Absolutely, and this resonates very well with us as well in Telia. The scale to work within the community, it's something that we couldn't do alone. So this is a journey together, and everything you said, Idir, I fully stand behind. So thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Idir. We will now hear from our colleagues at KDDI, who are progressing fast towards disaggregating their IP backbone network.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kenji Kumaki, General Manager and Chief Architect at KDDI, and I've experienced the entire KDDI network architecture and its protocol for over 25 years. We, KDDI, finally started to deploy a disaggregation model in our production network. So today I'm going to talk about the DDBR deployment. Here is the background. Why do we need a DDBR? As you know, the internet traffic is increasing every year. Actually, it was over 25 times during the decade, which was from 2011 to 2021. Almost all traffic is going through the backbone. That means the backbone router should have the high capacity without any limitation. As you know, the Cisco and the Juniper still provide almost all routers in the backbone area, meaning they don't have enough competitors. So obviously, this aggregation of hardware and software is driving the competition. Actually, we carriers can pick a new router from an alternative vendor, unlike the Cisco and the Juniper. The DDBR architecture allows the minimum investment, and we can add the infrastructure easily, even if the traffic is increasing. Also, this architecture enables to scale up and scale out at the same time and has high availability and reliability. So this architecture is really, really desirable in the backbone area. Here is the standard carrier network architecture. We DOR focus on the internet peering routers and the MPLS router as DDBR. We KDDI also have focused on both of them. Why do we need focus on these routers as a disaggregation model? Because in the backbone area, the routers just for the packet and the feature set and the architecture are really simple compared to backbone and the access areas. Here is a comparison about the router architecture. On the left-hand side, this is a traditional chassis-based router. In general, those routers depend on the single vendor solution, which means the vendors provide proprietary hardware and software. The problem here is those routers have a limitation of the number of line pairs due to a chassis size. That means the routers cannot scale out. The picture in the middle shows the cross-based router. This architecture is famous for the data center, where spine and reef are put like that. OTTs develop white boxes and deploy them, as you know. The problem here is we have to manage those routers separately, meaning we have to assign a global address in each router, and the routing signaling protocols are running between the routers. Also, we have to put fiber and optics between them. We don't want to waste IP addresses and money for the cost of the fiber and optics. On the right-hand side, this is the DDBR. This architecture is to resolve the issues for chassis and cross-based architecture. Finally, we reached our destination from the router architecture perspective. The DDBR can scale up and scale out at the same time and can be seen as a single network entity. Obviously, we were looking for such routers. That's why we KDDI decided to pick the DDBR about 3 years ago. We KDDI started to deploy DDBR already, and we are the first carrier to do it. Also, we have a good opportunity to announce it today. I hope other carriers also will deploy this router in their production network, and this router will become an industry standard. That's all. Thank you.
That was great. Back to you, Roy.
I knew going live we were going to have trouble with audio. So, all right. Well, again, my apologies. Thank you, Johan. This is how you know it's live, by the way, audience, right? Because I make mistakes like that. Not that I don't make them on recordings, but anyhow. Thank you, Johan. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Idir. And thank you, Kanji, for that informative session around open transport and a lot of the innovation that's ongoing. All right. Well, we're going to move on to Open RAN again, right? I mean, who's counting? But Open RAN clearly is important. Open Core, Open Transport, all of those are important. But we're going to talk about Open RAN again. But before we go into the session, which I'll actually be moderating, we are going to see some video testimonials from some of the active participants in the Open RAN project from various vendors. So let's go ahead and queue that up, and we can take a listen.
Hi, I'm Jason King, Marketing Director for Altiostar, which is now part of Rakuten Symphony. I am a TIP participant because Altiostar shares the same mission as TIP when it comes to providing mobile network operators with greater choice and flexibility in deploying radio access networks. We are proud of the work we have done within the Open RAN Outdoor Macro Group and are eager to see the greater adoption of TIP specifications in the market.
Participant because it provides great opportunities for connecting with the Open RAN ecosystem. I'm working with the Open RAN RIA and ROMA subgroups to accelerate the testing and deployment of Amdocs's analytics and automation software for O-RAN systems.
I am a TIP participant because we believe the value proposition of TIP. We probably cannot know all the challenges on the way, but we definitely know where we're going together with TIP. That is to make the internet access much easier and cheaper. Ourselves, as the first batch of TIP members, we enjoyed a fantastic journey with TIP in the past 5 years, participated in many projects in Europe, North America, Latin and Asia. TIP is a great place to work with Open RAN system partners, mobile carriers for the interoperability test, commercialization and validation. TIP is a spirit.
I am a TIP participant because being listed on TIP Exchange demonstrates the value, credibility, level of maturity, and commercial readiness of combo Open RAN radio products. Joining hands with industry innovators in the TIP's Open RAN project group, we strive to realize the benefits of Open RAN and boost network modernization worldwide.
I am a TIP participant because it allows us to participate in the TIP Open RAN project group activities and provide input to help improve technical requirements. We have also engaged actively in the test and integration project group, including collaboration with ecosystem partners in multiple TIP community labs. The TIP community has given Dell Technologies an excellent opportunity to participate in O-RAN and TIP PlugFest, validate interoperability, and we love having our PowerEdge servers as part of the TIP Exchange.
Fujitsu is a TIP member because we believe in the power of industry collaboration to accelerate the adoption of open, standards-based technologies. As a long-standing proponent of open networking, Fujitsu is committed to helping service providers speed innovation, select best-of-breed components, and deliver high-quality connectivity. We look forward to our continued successful collaboration with TIP.
NEC is a TIP participant because we strongly believe that open and disaggregated networks are key for the success of 5G. A rich ecosystem of vendors, solutions, and products is necessary in order to unleash innovation. Together with Netcracker, our subsidiary, we participate in a number of activities, from PlugFest to listing our products in the TIP Exchange, such as our massive MIMO open radio units, as well as working in a number of working groups in Open RAN, orchestration, and automation.
Netcracker is a TIP participant because we strongly believe that opening up the RAN will accelerate mobile innovation, and we're excited to be part of that. Our focus is to bring agility and automation to the RAN domain using our orchestration solutions. We're working with our parent company, NEC, as well as with TIP's growing ecosystem of validated partners.
Hello. Parallel Wireless is a TIP participant because we are passionate about enabling an open ecosystem of disaggregated RAN solutions. We are a fast-moving technology company, ambitiously driving, innovating, and collaborating to deliver customer success. As part of our TIP collaboration, Parallel Wireless is thrilled to be the first Open RAN vendor to power the TIP Community Lab in Indonesia. We look forward to continuing our collaboration with TIP to test and deploy Open RAN technology across the globe, optimizing networks that scale for the future.
Hi, Brooke Frischmeyer from Robin. We joined the TIP Open RAN team because we want to help them deploy a rich, vibrant, multi-vendor ecosystem. Doing so will help all of the providers become more competitive because they're not locked to the same monolithic, stagnant infrastructure as everybody else. At Robin, we make the Cloud Native Platform, CNP, and an automation tool from bare metal to services called MDCAP. All of that is on display in a demo here, where we will show how we can deploy 5G Open RAN, MEC, 5G Core, and staging solutions, all at the press of a button. So come check us out at the TIP Open RAN demo site and at robin.io. Have a great day.
I'm a TIP participant because it is inspiring to work with other industry leaders with a vision of what we need to deliver for communications to transform societies around the world for the better. There's a holistic vision, not just about the network components themselves, but also about what is needed to test and interoperate them. Viavi is proud to contribute to the TIP Community Labs, as this is the fastest way for vendors to develop innovative products that fit into the evolving ecosystem.
Hi, I'm Gil Hellman, Vice President of Telecom Solution Engineering and Architecture with Wind River. Wind River is a TIP participant because we see TIP as a highly instrumental in helping operators deploy Open RAN at scale. We're proud to collaborate with TIP community members such as Vodafone, Dell, and Intel to bring the world's first commercial Open RAN network to Europe and beyond.
Excellent. That was a lot of vendor testimonials, and I think that's a testimony to the power of TIP Open RAN. And obviously, there's a huge market and opportunity. And when you hear from that many vendors, it must be really, really interesting. And if you're not already a TIP member and you're listening, then I guess here's your opportunity. All right, what we're going to do next is get set up for an Open RAN panel. And on that panel, we have Atusi Hatafi, who's head of software and RAN architecture at Orange, Sushil Rawat, who is VP of RAN product platform at Rakuten Mobile, and Paul Crane, who is the Converged Network Research Director at BT. And we're going to talk about the journey to Open RAN productization. So let's go ahead and get set up for that panel, and I'll see you again in a second. Get this panel started, and thank you, panelists. We're going to talk about Open RAN in the context of 3 major operators. So we're going to get started here with a simple question: why Open RAN, and what are the opportunities and barriers you see for the technology? We'll start with Atusa.
Yeah, thank you. So if I want to summarize the main benefits and opportunities of Open RAN in few words, I would say that it will steer the competition and thus increases the ecosystem diversity. It will also lead to some increased innovation, and it will brought much more, let's say, flexibility, automation, and intelligence for the operation of the network. If I want to develop further, I would say that thanks to the disaggregation and the open interfaces at different levels of the radio network, Open RAN brings much more flexibility to the operators in terms of architecture, in terms of selection of the different radio components, and also the possibility to swap vendors. For example, through disaggregating the ORU and CUDU, operators can choose to swap only the vRAN software vendor instead of swapping the whole antenna, massive MIMO antenna, for example. And this is even more important in 5G with massive MIMO antennas, because the antenna itself, it needs to be swapped. Then Open RAN also leads to much more, let's say, simplification in the network architecture. It leads to better energy efficiency, and also it brings a capacity of differentiation between the operators. And this is particularly true when we are in RAN sharing scenarios or in large indoor deployments. For example, when we have a multi-operator indoor deployment, Open RAN removes the need to duplicate some of the components as it is done today, for example, in DAS-like systems. As we need to duplicate, in current systems, some of the components such as power amplifiers or analog to digital converters. So thanks to the Open RAN, we could significantly reduce the energy footprint. And then thanks to the radio intelligent controller, Open RAN gives the opportunity to operators to take a more active role in the automation and optimization of their networks, particularly through developing and sourcing their own algorithms. So these are the main benefits that I see with Open RAN. But at the same time, there's a point of vigilance, I would say, and actually, it's important to avoid a new vendor lock-in with Open RAN. Actually, it's important to avoid Open RAN ending up with few vendors and their preferred partner, and this is very important if you want to ensure a wide ecosystem.
Absolutely. And I think, those are pretty compelling reasons, right? Energy efficiency, flexibility, innovation, new ecosystems, but definitely, a whole bunch of capabilities that Open RAN brings out. But as you point out, we want to make sure that Open RAN stays open and we don't get locked into a new ecosystem, right? But and so maybe we'll see. Paul, anything you want to add to that, or Sushil? Paul?
I think that's a great summary of the potential benefits of Open RAN. We're at early days with Open RAN, and a lot of those ambitions on energy saving, cost reduction, etc., are aspirational, but yet to be proven. And so it's great, organizations like TIP are doing their integration projects, which allow those efforts to be explored. The key thing for us is customer experience. Is what do we deliver to our own customers? So what we're looking for is solutions which improve the customer experience that we can deliver. And Open RAN has the promise to do that. We're at early stages, but with the focus of the industry, I think we can probably do that. One point I would make, and it's one that we make quite publicly, is that we're not implementing a new architecture just because it's a new architecture. We implement technology for our customer experience, and so if it's proven that it will provide a better customer experience, we will do it. If there's something proprietary comes along that provides better customer experience, we will do that as well. So it's important for Open RAN to actually, those benefits that we've just been through are actually delivered.
Yep, I think that's fair. I mean, the end result has got to be good for the carrier, and in the end, it's going to be good for the customer as well, right? And good for the customer in a long-term basis, right? Because then Open RAN, presumably, even if a better proprietary solution comes along, it may be that there is a promise of Open RAN in terms of the ability to drive innovation in the midterm or the long term, and that's a decision that the carrier will have to make, right? Which way to go?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. And we've been at this open architecture bit for a number of years now.
Yes, we have.
In fact, we were doing Open RAN before it was even called Open RAN. So, but it's we're very keen, very enthusiastic about it, and there's massive promise. But it is going to require real consistent industry effort for those promises to actually come true.
Agreed, and that's why TIP Open RAN project is so critical, among others, right? Absolutely. Very good. Sushil, anything to add to that? I mean, you guys also have Open RAN experience, right?
And we are like in that bus where we have no other option. We are doing Open RAN. Our commitment to Open RAN is such that our network is completely Open RAN. We started, going in line with what Paul was saying. We started doing Open RAN network when the specification and standards of Open RAN was not in place. But we still took that opportunity where the work was going on and did Open RAN based implementation. Even that question itself, that why to do Open RAN, is basically asking why to innovate, why to do something which is already being done by somebody, right? So our personal view on this particular topic is everyone want to innovate, right? We know it is being done a certain way, but we believe that there is a better way to do it. There is diversification of supply chain which Open RAN brings. And most important is use cases for every operator is different. Somebody who's based out of Europe, their area of concerns are very different from somebody sitting in India or Japan or somewhere in Africa, Southeast Asia. So operators' need and use cases are very different. Giving that innovation in the hand of few companies basically kill that localization, right? That it becomes somebody sitting at some part of the world thinking innovate in a certain way basically blocks you from localization of innovation, right? So Open RAN also brings that opportunity where you can innovate based on your own need. You don't have to buy something which somebody thought good for you. You will do what is good for you. So that's what promises, that Open RAN promises, and that's what we believe in. We plan to automate ourselves. We plan to innovate ourselves.
Yep, no, absolutely. And I think we're going to drill down to some of those aspects in terms of your learning, given that, you know, you're one of the major sort of proponents of the architecture, as you said, you know, Open RAN before Open RAN, right? So, and definitely, and absolutely, I would say that, you know, the points that you brought up are absolutely right on in terms of, you know, control of your destiny, but in a way that builds on a common architecture or common components that everyone can share on, right? So you don't have to replicate R&D unnecessarily, but yet you can put your R&D where it's necessary for you to bring value to your customers in your regions, right? Looking at, you know, what I think has been shared by all of you. So at this point, I'm going to actually turn it over to Paul first. We're going to dig down into the three carriers that we have, and we're going to, you know, dig down into first BT and then Orange and then Rakuten, and dig a little deeper in terms of this whole discussion around Open RAN. So I'm going to start with Paul. We're going to talk about Open RAN and the famous RIC, as well as AI ML, right? So why is it important to drive innovation in Open RAN through an ecosystem of RIC and RIC apps developers? That is something that's quite different, right? Than anything that we've done historically on the RAN. So Paul. Paul, I think unmute if you could check that.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just trying to cut out some background noise. Our view is that the RIC is probably the most interesting component in the Open RAN architecture, and the reason for that is this is the where it allows an operator to focus on customer experience, and as Sunil just did, you know, localization, great term. You know, the objective is for the RIC to provide data and control through a series of APIs, so we can configure and implement policy on the RU, CU, and DUs. Now, with the RIC, again, it's very early days on the RIC, and there's going to be a lot of work to do to ensure that ambition comes to fruition, and we don't suffer from, getting back to a vendor lock-in, and hence the TIP RIA project group is driving down this direction. There are a number of benefits that we see, three primary ones. First one is the potential to deliver new services that we haven't delivered before via the RIC data and RIC APIs. A simple example of that, and I know a number of people are working on, is hyper localization. Localization down of devices down to centimeter level positioning in 3D. And that's potentially possible with the access to the RIC data, the data from the RAN that you could get via the RIC, and you could do that via an XApp, an application sat on top of the RIC. Interestingly, my research program back at BT, I look after networks research, and a good third of it now is actually based around machine learning and AI. And a good proportion of that is actually us exploring RX and XApps for the RIC, and we're looking at the opportunities for building our own, both for that new service concept, but also the second point with the RIC is actually optimization of your radio access network, because the optimization features are actually would come out of the network vendor's equipment and as become applications on top of the RIC. That gives us the ability of optimizing, say, things like handover, the integration of small cells into the macro level into our network, and it gives us the opportunity for us to actually write applications for doing that ourselves. Localization to our own own environment, not only our own geography, which can be different, but actually our own network as well. So that's the second reason. And of course the third reason, and probably one of the most important ones, is that this for the whole Open RAN concept is the RIC gives you the ability to run a single set of applications across multiple vendor RU, CU, and DUs. So it gives you that ability, okay, the opportunity then to flex and swap in and swap out to that level. So those are the three key areas which the RIC, the TIP RIA project group are actually exploring. Really interesting, I think, with that project group, how the massive interest across industry we've got with it. Big number of vendors engaged. I can't remember the exact number. I think something like 48 operators are actually part of that group. Really interesting, and we're very excited to be kind of leading and helping with that group.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense, and I think there's a lot of promise around the RIC, and both the near real time and the non real time. It's unfortunately named both NRTs, but regardless, I think fundamentally there looks to be potentially a lot of innovation and the ability of other vendors to participate without having to build your own entire RAN stack. You can actually add value to the operators, and the operators can add value themselves, right? As Sushil was saying, right? You can localize, you can customize, you can optimize for your own market, for all your own need, differentiate that way. So in terms of, let's sort of look at it at a different angle, which is Open RAN. It's an interesting technology. This is one situation where governments are actually now interested in the RAN and innovation and Open RAN, which is I would say probably quite promising and good because it comes with investment dollars, as we've seen. What opportunities do you see in this public-private partnership to promote Open RAN?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I think just a little bit of background. I think mobile networks have gone from over the last few decades from a nice to have through to being seen as the backbone to the digital economy, and becoming increasingly important as national critical infrastructure as time goes forward. Particularly with if the promise of 5G services, where more mission critical, life critical services are developed and deployed on mobile networks, then they become increasingly important. And hence governments of becoming very aware of that, and are very recognize that resilience and security of the supply chain into mobile networks and telecoms in general actually is become really important. And Open RAN with the promise of supply chain diversification, the promise of them being able to integrate components from smaller players into an end-to-end solution as being seen as a way of potentially satisfying that need for supply chain resilience. Now, the EU Commission, the UK government, and the US government have actually all very interested in this area. The one that I'm closest to is the UK government. They've just recently run a competition for funding of Open RAN and particularly RIC projects, and we're waiting for the results of that competition. Should be in sometime in December. But they've put in something around £30 million aside to fund those projects. The EU Commission have a Horizon 2020 program in place on RAN disaggregation, so Open RAN projects as well. And as we know, the US government by the FCC is also looking at funding projects, and have recently had a showcase of Open RAN solutions in North Carolina. So there's massive government interest, and I think it's really important for organisations like TIP to actually advise on what the best interventions that those governments could make to meet the aim of the joint aim that we've all got of supply chain resilience.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that, as you say, advice and counsel is important, right? It's governments can help they can also not help. And I think understanding how to have them help is important, because I think the policies and the investments are important. The innovation, the encouragement of innovation at the local level is helpful too, but also to not over nationalize these kinds of interests, because there's an important global collaboration that's part of this, right? And I think we're seeing that. So absolutely, and thank you for those examples as well. In terms of, it's very promising, and when there's that much interest and money in something, the key is, how do you shepherd it for success? And I think, as you point out, organizations like TIP are critical. I think that's one of the elements of TIP, making it much more smoothing the path, right, to success in collaboration with the government as well. So excellent. Well, thank you, Paul. Really appreciate that insight, from a BT perspective. And then let's move on to Orange, and we're going to talk about the Open RAN, the MOU group, and some elements around the roadmap. And so early this year, there were January, February, there were 5 European operators that came together, DT, Vodafone, Telefonica, TIM, and of course, Orange, came together to sign an MOU around Open RAN. And so I'm going to turn it over to Atousa to explain, why the group, why this initiative, and what are the objectives of this group. So Atousa.
Yeah, actually, even with the standardization of the Open RAN, we see that there are still a lot of variants and options in the specifications that actually could lead to a kind of fragmentation in the market. So it's important to move from, let's say, standardized to prioritized subset of features and interfaces in order to narrow down the options and give clear messages and clear directions on what the market needs really to focus on and what the operators will truly deploy. So that's why in Europe, we've launched the MOU initiative with the 5 major European operators, as you said. And the objective is to drive the ecosystem adapted to the European market needs and requirements. Then on the Open RAN MOU group side, actually our main objective is to promote the Open RAN main requirements, the MOU priorities, let's say, across the whole industry, and then get feedback from the industry, both from vendors and operators, to adapt and refine the requirements. Then we would like to rely on TIP to develop, test, and certify the Open RAN solutions in line with our needs, with the MOU priorities, and we would like TIP to consider also the proper deployment targets that could respond to the European market needs. These are the main, actually, rationales behind it.
That makes a lot of sense, and thank you. I think the prioritizing is an important part of it, because Open RAN, there's a lot of elements that I think, as Paul pointed out, it's still a journey. But making sure that the priorities are aligned with what the carriers actually want make a lot of sense. And so, in terms of you talked about certification and some of the testing elements. What else can organizations like TIP do to make it possible for the industry to move faster towards deploying Open RAN solutions for your prioritized market requirements?
Actually, for Open RAN to succeed, it's important, as I said before, to narrow down the options in order to decrease the fragmentation risk. It's also important to focus on the main, let's say, scenarios and priorities of the operators for real commercial deployments. And it's also important to optimize all of the efforts around test and validation. And this is exactly where the organizations like TIP could play a key role. Actually, TIP could allow us promoting the main scenarios, the main requirements, and also they can increase the collaboration between the different stakeholders, even between the competitors, let's say. And the objective is to refine all of these requirements and priorities into a pragmatic set of functions, features that could match both the, let's say, realistic implementations and at the same time could respond to the real needs from the market.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think what a lot of people see TIP as a sort of neutral ground where everyone can come together to collaborate to drive it forward. And as you point out, the focus in terms of making it actually deployable integrate it, make sure that it actually works together. I think that's key. And I think that's a lesson, at least I took away from many years, tracking NFV along the way. And that was one of the things that we learned a little later. We should have learned it a little earlier, but I see that the carriers and TIP doing the right thing up front. They're putting a lot of efforts into this integration, creating CI/CD type environments, given this Open RAN architecture being more cloud native, right? So definitely great. One of the elements in terms of, how do you see, obviously, TIP Open RAN project group is important, but there are other elements like the O-RAN Alliance, right? So how do you see them both coming together in supporting yours and potentially the other carriers' objective in unlocking the whole ecosystem?
Actually, the O-RAN Alliance is focused on a standardization, which is key for the Open RAN to be fully interoperable and to avoid any vendor lock-in. But on the other hand, TIP is more focused on the, let's say, productization and the market, let's say, availability of the Open RAN solutions. At the same time, TIP takes into account and leverages all of the standardized, let's say, features and specifications that are done in organizations like the O-RAN Alliance or 3GPP. Actually, TIP, as I said before, allows promoting the main requirements and then accelerates the development and deployment of end-to-end networks in an open architecture. Both are complementary, I would say, and it's important that the scope of work of both organizations remain consistent with each other.
No, and very well put. I think sometimes people do ask the questions in terms of, there's a lot of overlapping organizations. There's not really overlapping organizations. There's collaborating organizations, and I think what you just described was a succinct distinction between what each group is responsible for and the points of integration and collaboration between them. So thank you for that. So, all right. So I'm going to move on next to Rakuten and Sushil. We're going to talk about Open RAN adoption in Japan and what your plans are. So we'll start, Sushil, with so it's Open RAN Rail and ready for deployments. I think you're probably qualified to answer that question for sure. And what was the scale of your Open RAN efforts and what are your learnings? Sushil, you're on mute.
Sorry. So as I started with my first question itself, the first common question that I had, you would have get a sense of how aggressive and bullish we are on the Open RAN deployment and technology as such. When there is a question about existence of Open RAN, how real it is, I would say Rakuten as an operator today in Japan is a living example of existence of Open RAN, right? Not that we wouldn't have done it without that, but today this is our approach, and we have close to 30,000 sites working with 5 million customer in our network, which is completely based on Open RAN. So I don't think there is any question of realization of Open RAN. We are today a real example of how Open RAN can be adopted. There are a lot of questions that I also see and hear about when we get into these a lot of discussions. What is the performance of Open RAN? Is it comparable? Is Open RAN really a practical approach, whether it can give same services or not? We have invited a lot of companies, including Ookla and including OpenSignal, Umlaut. These are independent companies who come and do network assessment, and we have always been rated. I won't say number one, but it is like always at the same category of mature operators in Japan and globally. And one thing I can say with a lot of confidence, quality of network in Japan overall is much higher than a lot of other geographies. I'm not naming anybody specifically, but quality of network in Japan is definitely very, very good. And we are competing there. Our KPIs are in line and as per the industry in Japan. So that's a very, very clear distinction how Open RAN can be realized and what Open RAN promises. I think it is delivering to its promises in Japan. Now, from the learning perspective, as you asked as a follow-up question that you had, our learning is doing something like Open RAN, right? TIP is doing a lot of work. O-RAN Alliance is doing a work. OCP is doing some work to help telco industry also. So there's a lot of work which is happening, which is basically helping vendors and this ecosystem to grow. Now, ecosystem is growing, but we now have to start investing. Operators now have responsibility to start investing and encourage these vendors to bring up a quality product. Right? If as an operator we keep insisting on lowering down the cost, I think vendors would probably not deliver to the promises of quality. What we have done, our learning from the deployment in Japan, is that we have understood that if you want a quality product, a quality network, you have to keep investing into the product, encourage vendor to develop a product which promises quality. That's definitely one thing that we have adopted, and that has actually helped us go over the barriers of ecosystem. When we invest into the vendors, they come up with ideas, they come up with a product, we solve problems and we move forward. That's how we have been able to deploy this in Japan. So I think that's one of the few learning that we have from our Japan deployment.
Excellent. And I think that's important, because sometimes you look at Open RAN and people like, well, oh, Open RAN's better because it costs less because of the competition and some of these other elements. And you're absolutely right? If we just focus on that, then we've missed the mark. There are other elements of Open RAN that are important, and other attributes that you point out. The quality is important. That especially as we're trying to get other carriers and other people to adopt Open RAN, the quality has to be there. So given that part of this Open RAN is some of the principles in there include disaggregation, which means more elements, more software components and to manage. So do you see RAN orchestration, management automation for Open RAN as a requirement? And are there any specific use cases that you see as important?
So other than Open RAN, the other important thing that Rakuten has adopted is virtualization. Other than Open RAN, RAN virtualization is definitely something we have done, but rest of our network, including core networks and a lot of other components that you have in the network, including ID systems, we don't run anything on the appliance hardware. This is our principle of working with any of the vendors, that their applications, their offers has to be software oriented and virtualized. And that basically brings about the taking advantage of IT infrastructure, taking advantage of IT industry, where orchestrator plays a very important role, right? So the entire lifecycle management and orchestration of network function, including RAN, is a very, very important aspect. And it has to be dealt very carefully, because it's a centralized node, which sometimes turns out to be a nuclear button, right? So it's all about how you use it. Orchestration and automation is definitely one of our focus areas. If you have followed our investment in last few years, we have done quite a significant investment into cloud platforms and also into our own orchestration platform plus automation platform. So that shows how serious Rakuten Mobile is from SMO perspective. And I think TIP is also doing some remarkably good job there. They have a separate work group, which is Open RAN orchestration and management. And CI/CD is one of the important aspects which is being addressed in their sub work groups. So and we are engaged with a lot of such subgroups where we take the work that team is doing. We have been working with OCP teams, we have been working with O-RAN, and all the, as previous panelist was also saying, this all collaboration of open organization, we are taking advantage from that and building our network accordingly.
Excellent. Yeah, you guys got very serious about this whole orchestration on innovation and all these other elements, right? I mean, you brought NOI in, right? So that's clearly serious about it and beyond your ongoing investment. And how do you see? I think one of the things that Paul had brought up early on in this conversation was AI ML, right? And we always hear about AI ML and RAN optimization and RIG. So how do you evaluate the success of AI ML in RAN optimization so far? And sort of beyond that, how can Open RAN help improve the state of the art, right, on mobile networks?
So again, I'll take a reference from what I said in my first remark. AI ML is again very specific use case. Assume AI as a human body, right? Eventually, we are just trying to artificially create what a human body does, basically intelligence, right? And intelligence is very situational. If we trust that one company in Silicon Valley can simulate all the use cases across the world, not going to happen, because every country is different, every machine is different, every site at some point is different. So simulating that intelligence from one company or one set of developers sitting somewhere is probably not possible. So we need to have that intelligence development, that algorithm development in-house, or more localized, I would say, right? We are doing a lot of work in AI domain. There are tools that we have developed in-house, something like service SLA assurance. Service quality is somewhat measured by a lot of CSPs and operators. Everybody maintain their SLAs, but the way to measure that is more manual. We go and verify that in the field, take our logs, do the benchmarking, and submit it. There are solutions. There are possibility of doing network probing and looking at the pattern of the traffic coming from the sites and detect if there is any anomalies going on, if there is anything happening at the service level, degradation is happening. So we have a lot of in-house applications that our teams has built, which is based on AI algorithms. But I would still say RIC, as Paul was mentioning before, RIC is definitely one of the key factors for AI ML, right? We have built this multiple applications which are more, disaggregated, I would say. They run on different areas and perform differently. We need to have, as industry, need to have a scalable and elastic RIC platform, which comes with the openness where integration and onboarding of application is, I would say, just a click of a button. That should be imagination that we should have, because otherwise the smaller company building an AI application or ML application, if they have to spend months and months into onboarding of application and automating it, it's going to be a big challenge. So from our perspective, I'm taking a very practical approach where we say we need to have a scalable and standard platform as a RIC, which gives a very open flexibility to small application provider to go and onboard their application. Then only we can leverage. On machine learning especially, we are very serious in terms of how predictive operations can be done, how predictive maintenance can be done using ML, how power management can be done. Power is becoming one of a hot topic after the recent climate summit. Also, there is a lot of discussion going on around how power optimization can be done better. And operators, data center servers are one big part of overall power consumption. A lot of part of the countries, including Japan and Europe, governments are being very concerned about it. And we are taking very serious efforts. Companies like Intel and others who provide silicons are developing engines to do a better power optimization. But somebody has to pick it up from application perspective and run in between hardware and software to optimize the overall power performance of the servers. So that's where we see AI ML playing very, very important role for us and overall for telcos when we go to the virtualization era.
No, very fair. And I think, that is not just optimizing the RAN for performance and the like, but as you point out, power is one of the big things, with 5G build out, one of the big elements and a very timely topic today, the whole area of sustainability, right? So absolutely great point there. So at this point, I'd like to thank Sushil from Rakuten, Paul from BT, and Atoussa from Orange for your time and your thoughts around Open RAN and the adoption and some of the key trends around that. And with that, we'll wrap this panel, and I'm going to turn it back we're going to jump back to the main event and move on to our next panel. So thank you again, panelists, and stay with us, audience. All right, thanks again for staying with us. Hope you enjoyed that Open RAN panel, and thanks again to the folks at Orange, Rakuten, and BT for joining us on that panel. we are near the end of the event. I know it's time has flown. It's amazing how time passes when you're having fun. And at this point, we're going to go into our closing remarks. I will be bringing in to join me for closing remarks is going to be Caroline Chan, who is VP and GM of the 5G Infrastructure Division of the Network Platform Group at Intel. Hi, Caroline.
Hello, good morning. I'm here in California, so bright and early.
Excellent. Good morning, Caroline. Hope you've had your coffee, or maybe you don't need coffee. And as well, we have Juan Carlos Garcia, who is SVP of Technology Innovation and Ecosystem at Telefonica. I guess you're not in California, Juan Carlos.
No, I'm in Madrid, Robbie. Good morning.
Good afternoon, Juan Carlos.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. Well, we've heard a lot today, a lot of rich content, and I think, everyone's probably enjoyed that. But at this point in time, I want to see what your thoughts are. I'll turn it over to you, Caroline, and then Juan Carlos, I guess, for your closing remarks and closing thoughts. So go ahead.
So for me, it's really a sweet moment. I've been on this journey, FlexRAN, Open RAN for 10 years. And I was one of the original people who sat down and said, we need something like TIP. To see this, the whole, how TIP has taken this disaggregated network, this Open RAN, open network, open Wi-Fi this far, it just warms my heart. And it just sees the power of ecosystem coming together with the consortium, industrial consortium body like TIP that helps pull everyone together. We put things together. We don't, we take the spec, but we really work through the interoperability, the putting the power of doing things together. Intel's really proud to be on the EC alongside with under the leadership of Telefonica. We actively participate in the Open RAN working group. We worked on Open Wi-Fi working group, and we're looking forward to work on the services group that will really take the 5G into different verticals and private networks. I could not be more proud of the journey we've been in. It has not always been easy. Juan Carlos can tell you we have our own debates and own arguments at the board level, right? It's been 2 years we haven't seen each other, but this event really highlight the progress we made and also gave us a roadmap of what we need to do. The last panel with all three operators talk about the things they've done, things they still need to do. I think it's a call to action for all of us, especially I'm looking at you, Juan Carlos, being one of the pioneers, innovators, and flag bearers, as we say here in the United States, to carry this forward. So I'm so proud to be here, and you have Intel's commitment to carry this on, to support TIP in anything that we need to do. We contribute resources, heads, expertise, hardware, and enabling software to make this happen. Juan Carlos, what's your thoughts?
Well, we at Telefonica, you know Caroline very well, share your motivation and enthusiasm with this technology and this new paradigm, no? This new way of doing networks. No? So we, as you know, are strong proponents of this open and disaggregated ecosystem from the very beginning. We started very early as well with this new approach and have been progressively applying the paradigm in the different public network domains, but also beyond that, no, to enterprise and home networks. So we have moved step by step in the design, requirement specification, testing of all these open systems, first for transport technology, IP and optical, but also then for access networks, no, both mobile and fixed. So as you know, in our view, so this is a journey that where we are not looking just at efficiency. Okay, so this is probably one aspect of the open technologies, but we look beyond that. No, it was highlighted in the last panel. It is also for us a change in the paradigm, no, for our operating model towards a higher efficiency, flexibility, and agility. Okay. And this is well, TIP is offering us the opportunity to explore all these new ways of automating and orchestrating the network resources in ways that we could never imagine some years ago. Okay, and we see TIP as a great enabler for all this new open innovation. We have been involved, as you know, in TIP and the ecosystem at all levels since the early days, and we are happy, as you say, to contribute and keep on doing, starting regularly new activities with different partners, both operators and technology providers. And we find in TIP a great place for this open collaboration and co-creation with many industry players, including big suppliers and big companies like Intel, but also small innovative companies that are bringing great breakthroughs that are extremely relevant for the evolution of all this. We are leading, as you know, and actively involved in major initiatives like Open Optical Packet Transport, in MAST, dealing with SDN controllers, in 5G private network solutions, and also in Open RANs, in things like aligning specifications with other operators, as was mentioned in these sessions, and also in the orchestration and automation that we consider essential, as Paul mentioned, on open disaggregated technologies. So, right. And not only this, we are embarking every day on new things. So, as you know, we are part of starting the Fixed Broadband Open Group project group that will cover the broadband network gateways and open optical line termination for FTTH. Okay, yeah. So we have seen plenty of examples of this from different companies in this event, and I would like to thank all the speakers for sharing their inspiring views and experiences. It's been great. I don't know, Caroline. I had a very good time listening to all this. It's for us a dream, to become reality, no?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it has. And remember when we first started it, weren't that many people. Our first Insight in person was done in a Facebook cafeteria, and the last one before the whole thing got shut down was in a proper conference auditorium in Amsterdam. And just in that short few years, how much it's grown. And one thing I think people may not realize that TIP, besides the one with the doers, we also work, intensively across the board with the public policy side of it. I know, Juan Carlos, you've done quite a bit to talk to the EU government. We've done it globally. That's one aspect that together as a industry consortium like TIP, we'll be able to speak on behalf of everyone, the suppliers, the vendors, the operators and end users, why a disaggregated system is important to the health and innovation of this the industry. I'm actually here in California speaking at the Enterprise 5G conferences with many enterprises, and they're interesting 5G. And one common theme is they want this to be open, they want this to be cloud-like, so they can leverage it for their enterprise private business. I think Paul said it really well, that connectivity from become just that to a backbone of digital transformation. And that's a huge opportunity for all of us here, especially with a consortium that spans a lot of the ecosystems, including the developers. And I think that's our role ahead will be even more important. Maybe, Juan Carlos, maybe you can share your thoughts on that.
Yes. As you said, TIP is probably a good mean to align the voice of the industry. No, at least for Telefonica, is the place of choice to share requirements, also to shape the development of these new open technologies that the industry needs. It is for us difficult to find a better environment to do this. No? TIP is also unique in other aspects, on our view. The test and validation framework makes TIP Exchange also the industry reference to get a clear signal on what technologies are ready to meet the strong requirements from the telco industry. Okay, we are not easy, so operators are not easy. We know that we are posing very, very strong requirements, but the alignment we do in TIP help the technology providers in having at least a good guidance on where to put the focus in their developments and their investments. Okay. Yeah, and I would like just to give a few remarks, okay, before closing, that were already highlighted by Jago in the introduction, by the way. So, in case you are an operator, TIP can be your ally in the technology journey and help you in introducing open and disaggregated technologies in your network with the right level of confidence. That this is something very important for operators. what can you do in TIP? How can you contribute? Well, it is very easy. So bring your requirements, include Open RAN, fixed broadband, transport, core products in your RFIs and RFPs. We need to show our clear interest in this ecosystem to accelerate its development. And I don't know, Caroline, if you have any recommendation for technology suppliers, system integrators on TIP?
Intel, but
Yes.
no.
Intel.
As Intel, yeah.
Yeah.
But look beyond, the ecosystem is really expanding. Like you said, right? Really, we would love to have people joining us in this journey together, globally. U.S., Europe, Africa, Latin America. Please join us in this journey, and we really look forward to expanding global with the success we've had so far.
Yeah, I think we need the industry to come together, as you say, from all regions, different partners. We need a model that works for everyone, that removes duplication, that fosters innovation, no matter the state of the contributor. We need also coordination and collaboration in these validation efforts across multiple operators. We need you helping with testing and validation, and the time is now. Okay, and well, I would like to hand over to Roy, but Caroline, I think you can share with me that we should give a big thank you to Roy for conducting the
Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Roy. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Juan Carlos. Always a pleasure, and I'm glad to be here. I think, as you shared, I think that was a rousing call to action for TIP. I mean, you can't say no to collaboration. You can't say no to innovation, right? And TIP is fulfilling a very important role in the entire ecosystem, with communications now as the backbone of industry, as the backbone of society. It's critical that we figure out how to do it better, how to do it in a cost-effective way to reach more people across the world, especially in developing countries. And so I think that's a big call to action that hopefully the audience will respond to. And I'm always hopeful, right? And glad to be part of this. Again, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for having me on this event. It was very informative and also very inspiring, both. Excellent. All right, with that, I would like to thank Caroline and thank Juan Carlos for their participation and their closing remarks. And again, right, big call to action to all of you out there. If you're already not in the TIP, come join. And if you're in TIP, thank you and keep up the good work. You've heard a lot of the efforts across, Open RAN, transport, core, Wi-Fi, right? How to get more connectivity throughout the world. And so if that's something that you can resonate with, absolutely, I'm sure you can figure out how to participate. Just reach out to TIP. At this point, I would like to thank again the sponsors for making this possible. IP Infusion, Mavenir, Parallel Wireless, Quali, and Vector Data. Thank you for your support in making TIP Insights 2021 a reality. Thank you especially to you, the audience, for staying with us the last couple of hours. And if you have a bit of time, I encourage you to check out the virtual booths. They are available on the platform on the left side navigation. Just go ahead and click that. And all right, well, I think we've come to the very end of the event. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you did as well. All right, well, wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And if you're in Australia and still on, my hat's definitely off to you. All right, bye for now.